Hello everybody and welcome back to Out of Body's 31 Days of Halloween. Today I'm going to be talking about the Magevney house, which is another very old home in Memphis, and it has kind of a mean ghost that resides there. So if you want to hear more about that, just keep on watching. So the Magevney home is located at 198 Adams Avenue, which is very close to the Victorian Village homes. I think this one's technically part of that, even though it's not really the Victorian style. As you can see in the pictures over here, it's more of a cottage style. So it was built in 1833, and it was later purchased by Eugene Magevney, and that is why the house is now known as the Magevney house. And it is still today one of the oldest homes in Memphis. It is not the oldest, even though it was built in 1833. That's pretty old, but there's actually another house that I know of called Davy's Plantation that's near where I live that is even older. I think that one was built in like 1809 or something like that. But this is definitely one of the oldest. So Mr. Magevney was born and raised actually in Ireland. The city that he comes from, or the town in Ireland, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I'm going to give it a try, but I'm going to put it up on the screen too if I can. It's called County Fermanagh. And so he was born and raised there, and he lived there until the 1820s, and he came to America. He lived in Pennsylvania for a while, and then he finally moved to Memphis. He actually studied to be a priest, like a Catholic priest for a while, but then decided it wasn't for him and became a teacher. So he started teaching in Memphis as soon as he got there, and he was actually the city of Memphis, their first permanent school teacher. So there's a lot of history with this home, a lot of firsts that I'll be talking about in this video. So apparently he taught his school in a small cabin in Court Square. From what I've read, he taught men only. So back then, you know, it was probably white men only. What I thought was interesting is that the students back then paid him in land. They didn't pay him in any sort of like trade or money or anything like that, any sort of goods or anything. It was land. So he ends up owning all of this land that his students paid their tuition with, and over time he becomes very, very wealthy because of that land. So Mr. Magevney was a very devout Catholic. Like I said earlier, he had actually considered becoming a priest at one point. In 1839, the first Catholic Mass, or Catholic service, if you're not familiar with what Mass is, it's just like a church service. The first service of that kind in Memphis happened in that house. So that is another first that happened there. The altar that they used for Mass was actually one of his dressers. And it's still there in the home. If you tour the home now, it's still there. Now, I have toured this home already, and I won't talk about, you know, what I experienced as far as when I was in there in this video. I'll do that in my next video. So what's interesting is that I went and toured it first, and I experienced some things there. I could read some energies there. And then now that I'm reading in this book, there's some things that kind of correlate with what I sensed there. Now, I'll talk about that in my next video, but it's pretty interesting. Also, the first Catholic wedding in the city of Memphis wasn't also in his home, and it was his wedding between him and one of his students. One of his students that he taught back in Ireland. So in 1840, Mr. Magevney had sent for one of his former students, Mary Smythe, from Ireland. He had her sent over here, and they got married. Now, I will say, to add, when I toured the home, the tour guide said that apparently, I think it was 12 years. She had waited 12 years for him to ask her to marry him. Apparently she had wanted to marry him when he was still in Ireland, but he never asked her. I think they wrote back and forth a little bit after he went to America, and then 12 years later, he finally asks her to marry him. So Mr. and Mrs. Magevney had two children. One of them was named Mary, and the other one was named Kate. So another first, the first Catholic christening, or like baptism and confirmation, if you know what that all is. The first ceremony of all of that happened shortly after their first child's birth, so that was the first Catholic christening in Memphis. So in 1840, Mr. Magevney was actually able to retire from his teaching because he was making so much money from the land that he owned and doing real estate. So with that being said, though, he was a very, very frugal man. He didn't spend money on lavish things. As you can see from the pictures of this home, it's very, very modest. It does have an upstairs, but it's very, very small. Each floor is very small. And supposedly he just didn't spend a lot of money on lavish things, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, he had a large estate, but he lived pretty humbly. So unfortunately, in 1873, Mr. Magevney passed away due to the yellow fever epidemic that came through Memphis. It came through a few times, I believe. I guess his wife survived through it. She didn't pass away until 1889. So their oldest daughter, Mary, actually became a nun. She was a Dominican sister at the, I'm going to have to read this here, at the Sacred Heart convent in Galveston, Texas in 1882. Unfortunately, she died of cancer in 1891. So their youngest daughter, Kate, actually lived in the home until 1925. So their youngest daughter, Kate, married her first husband in 1867. Unfortunately, he later died in the home of congestion in 1872. She then married her second husband in 1882, and they lived together in Kate's mother's home, the same house, until 1887 when her second husband died. So apparently after Mr. Magevney's death, Kate, their youngest daughter, took over his real estate business. At the time of her death in 1930, the estate was worth a whopping $3.5 million. And that's in 1930. Nowadays, that would probably be like, I don't know, 30 million. Like, that's crazy. He had a large estate, and he was very frugal, and his wife and his kids were very frugal with it, and it built up to something huge. So unfortunately, Kate died without leaving a will. So the estate was under a lot of lawsuits for a while, for about 8 years. And eventually the estate went to Kate's adopted daughter. She actually did adopt a daughter at one point. So it went to her, and then she gave the house to the city in 1941. So unfortunately, the house sat empty for many, many years until the Memphis Park Commission finally went in and renovated it. So now today it's actually a museum and you can go tour it. They have furniture in there that date back to the 1850s. Some of the furniture is original to the Magevney family, and then some of it is not. Okay, so now that we know a little bit about the history, I want to go into the supposed hauntings at this place. So, back to the hauntings. Apparently, there is a not so nice spirit that lingers there. I don't know that anybody has ever said who it is. I don't know if it's, well, I do know, but I do know because I've toured it and I know what I've sensed there, but I'm not going to give it away. But as far as what I've read and researched, nobody really knows who the spirit is. They think maybe it's Mr. Magevney, maybe it's one of their daughter's husbands that died. Who knows? I know, but I'm not going to tell you yet. There has been unexplained activity in this home for decades. Now, some employees that work there have reported to feeling so uncomfortable in the home that they'd have to go home, that they'd have to leave. So some employees reported feeling so uncomfortable that they would actually stay outside when they didn't have to give a tour. Instead of staying in the home, they would actually go outside because they just felt so uncomfortable. A lot of visitors that come to the home to tour it have felt so uncomfortable on the inside when they get in there that they immediately leave. Apparently, at one point, a woman that came to tour the home actually left in tears because she felt something so unpleasant in the home that she just couldn't handle it, and she was in tears and she left. So one of the former employees felt like most of the activity kind of centered around a bed that was located in the front bedroom. And on another occasion, there was a mother and her small daughter that were visiting the home, and the daughter is staring intently out one of the windows that faces the old St. Peter's Church, which that is a story for another day as well, because supposedly that very, very, very old church is also haunted. But she was staring at that church, staring at the alleyway next to it. So after a little while, she looks up to her mom and asks, "Mommy, Who is that man? Now both the mother and the tour guide looked out the window. They didn't see anything. They didn't see anybody out there. On another occasion, the old secretary desk that Mr. Magevney owned that's still there, it's always locked, and apparently it had opened by itself. Now, people have said to have seen or heard the spirits of little children around the home. Now, it could be the children of Mr. and Mrs. Magevney, or it could be their granddaughter, the adopted granddaughter. But it's said that 2 little girls have been spotted peering through the bedroom windows. Volunteers have also found small footprints of children in the backyard, like I guess in the mud or something, that weren't there the night before. They'd find it first thing in the morning. And they've also heard the sound of like a ball being thrown down the stairs. Now the stairs was originally on the outside of the house, and when they renovated it to make it into a museum, it was moved inside. But people have apparently heard the sounds of like a ball falling down the stairs. So that is the end of my video today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This house is a little spooky. I've been in it before during the day. Again, I will not spoil what I experienced there and what my theories are just yet. I will do that in the next video, so stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!